Lee Jin-woo, a millionaire CEO and widower, fired 9 nannies in just 15 days, unable to find anyone who could handle his rebellious daughter, Lee Ha-eun. When Kim Min-ji, a young nanny initially dismissed for her unassuming nature, entered their lives, she brought an unexpected sweetness that began to change everything. The silence in the vast living room of the Lee mansion was heavy, almost oppressive, broken only by the distant tick-tock of a grandfather clock. Lee Jin-woo was slumped on the leather sofa, an untouched glass of whiskey on the coffee table. 9 nannies in 15 days. 9. Frustration simmered, mixed with a pang of guilt he refused to acknowledge. No one seemed capable of handling Ha-eun. No one understood his daughter. Or perhaps, he thought with a bitter sigh, no one understood him. His gaze fell upon the crumpled card his secretary had handed him, the name Kim Min-ji, written in simple script. He remembered her. The unassuming girl, with modest clothes and a strangely calm gaze. He had dismissed her without a second thought, convinced that her simplicity wouldn't fit into his world. But now, with the 10th nanny fleeing in tears after just 3 hours, desperation was a persuasive advisor. With a grunt, Jin-woo picked up the phone. "Call Miss Kim Min-ji, tell her to come tomorrow morning, and prepare a contract, a very strict one." Min-ji arrived punctually at 9 the next morning, her heart beating a little faster than usual. The imposing mansion seemed even larger up close. With its wrought-iron gates and meticulously manicured gardens, she felt a knot in her stomach, but her determination was stronger. She needed that job. Jin-woo received her in the library, his face as impassive as ever. He offered no smile, no warm greeting. He simply pointed to the chair opposite him and pushed a stack of papers across the desk. "This is the contract, Miss Kim," he began, his voice cold and authoritative. "The clauses are clear. Full-time, no days off for the first 6 months, a starting salary below market rate, subject to review after an evaluation period. Any failure to follow my instructions or any sign that you cannot handle Ha-eun will result in immediate termination. Understood?" Min-ji read the terms, her face remaining neutral. It was even stricter than she had imagined. The demands were almost impossible, the salary a fraction of what other nannies would command. But she nodded. "Understood, Mr. Lee." "I don't expect you to last," Jin-woo added, his gaze piercing hers. "No one does. My daughter is a challenge." "I will do my best, Mr. Lee," Min-ji responded, her voice soft but firm. She signed the contract, feeling the weight of responsibility but also a strange sense of purpose. A few hours later, Min-ji was in Ha-eun's room. The space was an organized chaos of scattered toys, discarded clothes, and scribbled drawings on the walls. Ha-eun, a 7-year-old girl with large eyes and a stubborn pout, sat on the floor, completely ignoring her. She was pushing a toy car with a broken wheel, making an irritating scraping sound. "Hello, Ha-eun," Min-ji said softly, kneeling at a respectful distance. "My name is Min-ji. I'll be your new nanny." Ha-eun didn't respond. She just continued pushing the car, her lips pressed tightly together. Min-ji watched in silence for a few minutes, without pressing. She noticed the broken car, the frustration in the girl's eyes, as she tried to make it roll straight. "It looks like your car is hurt," Min-ji commented, her voice full of empathy. "May I take a look?" Ha-eun stopped, raising her eyes to Min-ji for the first time. There was a mix of distrust and curiosity in her gaze. She said nothing, but she also didn't pull the car away when Min-ji slowly approached. Min-ji carefully picked up the car. The wheel was loose, the plastic axle broken. She took out a small sewing kit she had brought with her, an old habit of fixing small things. With a needle and a piece of strong thread, she began to improvise, carefully stitching the wheel back into place, reinforcing the broken plastic with firm, almost invisible stitches. Her fingers were agile and precise. Ha-eun watched, her eyes fixed on Min-ji's hands. The car's noise had ceased, replaced by the girl's attentive silence. When Minji finished, she tested the wheel. It was firm. "There," Minji said, handing the car back to Haun with a small smile. "Now it can run again." Haun took the car, her small fingers brushing the stitching. She pushed it gently. The wheels spun smoothly. A small glimpse of surprise, perhaps even a flicker of gratitude, passed through the girl's eyes before she quickly reverted to her usual expression. But, for a brief moment, the ice around Haun seemed to have cracked, just a little. And Minji, with her patience and a simple gesture, had noticed. The morning sun filtered through the tall windows of the Li mansion, illuminating the golden dust motes that danced in the air. Li Jinwu came down for breakfast, his face still marked by its usual seriousness. His eyes, accustomed to sweeping the environment for imperfections, paused for an instant in the living room. Ha-un was on the floor, pushing the broken car. The wheel, now firmly stitched, spun without the irritating creak from before. The girl didn't smile, but the persistence in her play was a subtle sign that something had changed. Jinwu frowned. The nanny, Minji, was sitting on a distant sofa, reading a children's book in a low voice, not pressing Ha-un to participate. She seemed a discreet figure, almost invisible, but her presence was undeniable. "Good morning, Mr. Li," Minji said, rising with a respectful bow as he passed. "Good morning," he replied, his voice dry. He didn't comment on the car, nor on Ha-un's unusual quietness. He simply proceeded to the dining room, where breakfast was already served. His mind, however, registered the image of Ha-un and the repaired car. It was a small detail, but persistent. The following days followed a similar pattern. Ha-un continued to be a fortress of silence and passive resistance. She didn't throw loud tantrums like with previous nannies, but she ignored Minji with a silent determination. Minji, in turn, was not fazed. She spoke to Ha-un about the books she read, about the clouds passing by the window, about the colors of the drawings the girl scribbled. She never demanded a response, only offered her calm and constant presence. One afternoon, while tidying toys in Ha-un's room, Minji found a wooden box hidden under the bed. Inside, there were some old drawings. One of them caught her attention. It was a vibrant, though somewhat faded, drawing of a smiling woman in the kitchen, surrounded by pots and a steaming plate of japchae. Beside the woman, a smaller Ha-un, with a wide smile, reached out to take a piece of the sweet potato noodle. In the corner, scribbled in childish handwriting, was written, "Mommy and my favorite japchae." Minji's heart tightened. She looked at Ha-un, who was sitting on the carpet, stacking blocks disinterestedly. That drawing was more than an image. It was a window to a memory, a piece of warmth Ha-un had kept. That night, after Ha-un fell asleep and Jinwu hadn't yet returned from work, Minji went down to the kitchen. The mansion's kitchen was vast and impersonal, equipped with the latest appliances, but rarely used for home-cooked meals. The chefs prepared gourmet dishes, but there was no smell of real food, of home. Minji found the necessary ingredients: sweet potato noodles, fresh vegetables, meat. She worked in silence, her movements precise and familiar. The aroma of toasted sesame, garlic, and soy sauce began to fill the air, a scent that hadn't lingered in the corridors of that house for a long time. Jinwu arrived home later than usual, exhausted from another day of meetings. As he opened the door, an unexpected smell hit him. It wasn't the usual neutral, clean aroma, nor the restaurant food smell the chefs typically prepared. It was a homey, comforting scent that evoked almost forgotten memories. He followed the aroma to the kitchen and found Minji finishing arranging a plate of japchae on the counter. "What is this?" he asked, his voice laden with surprise. Minji turned, a slight blush on her cheeks. "Mr. Li, I..." I found a drawing of Ha-Yun. It seemed to be her mother's favorite food. I thought perhaps she might like a little warmth. Jin-woo looked at the plate. The japchae gleamed with colorful vegetables and tender meat, exuding an inviting steam. He couldn't remember the last time japchae had been prepared in that house. The image of his late wife smiling in the kitchen flashed in his mind. The next day, at dinner, Yi-Haeun sat at the table, her face expressionless. Min-ji placed a small plate of japchae in front of her, beside the usual meal prepared by the chefs. Haeun looked at the plate, then at Min-ji, then at her father, who watched the scene with unusual intensity. "It's japchae, Ha-Yun," Min-ji said softly. "Your mommy used to make it for you, didn't she?" Ha-Yun said nothing. Her eyes, however, fixed on the plate. Slowly, with an almost imperceptible hesitation, she picked up her chopsticks. Jin-woo held his breath. Ha-Yun picked up a piece of noodle and a vegetable, brought it to her mouth, and chewed. Her eyes widened slightly. A glimpse of something, perhaps nostalgia, perhaps a faint pleasure, passed across her face before she quickly hid it again. But she took another piece. And another. Jin-woo watched, shocked. Ha-Eun was eating. Not just eating, but she seemed less distant. Min-ji sat in silence, a small, discreet smile on her lips. The air in the dining room, usually so formal and cold, seemed to have warmed a little. Jin-woo felt a strange pang in his chest, a mix of surprise and something more, something he couldn't name. The nanny he had hired out of desperation, the woman he thought wouldn't last, was doing something no one else had managed. She was bringing back a piece of the past, a piece of warmth for his daughter, and perhaps for him too. The days that followed the japchae dinner were marked by a subtle yet noticeable change in the atmosphere of the Lee mansion. Hae-gun didn't become an exuberant child overnight, but the wall of silence that surrounded her began to show small cracks. She was still reserved, but now, occasionally, her eyes would follow Min-ji as the nanny tidied the room or read a book. Once, Min-ji caught her drawing a pot of japchae in her notebook, an almost imperceptible smile playing on her lips. Min-ji continued with her patient and gentle approach. She didn't force interaction, but was always present, offering a hand to help with a difficult puzzle or a soft comment about the story she was reading. She discovered that Ha-Eun had a secret love for fairy tales, and every night read to the girl until her eyes grew heavy, even if Ha-Eun never directly asked. The girl would just snuggle a little closer on the sofa, feigning disinterest, but absorbing every word. Jin-woo observed everything from afar. He noticed the quietness in the house, the absence of screams, and Min-ji's constant presence. He saw her mending a teddy bear with the same dexterity she had used to fix the car, or preparing a healthy snack that Ha-Eun, to his surprise, ate without complaint. Every small observation was a blow to his armor of skepticism. He had judged Min-ji by her appearance, by her humble origin, and she was proving him wrong in every possible way. A pang of guilt hit him, mixed with a growing curiosity about this woman who seemed to see the world so differently from his own. One morning, as Jin-woo prepared to leave for work, he saw Min-ji and Ha-Eun in the garden. Ha-Eun was sitting on a bench, watching Min-ji water the flowers. The nanny spoke about the colors and names of the plants, and Ha-Eun, for the first time in a long time, seemed genuinely engaged, asking a question about a red rose. Jin-woo stopped, observing the scene. Sunlight bathed the two, and for a moment, the image of a happy family formed in his mind, before he abruptly pushed it away. That week, an annual charity event for Jin-woo's company was scheduled. It was a gala dinner, one of the most important on Seoul's social calendar, and Jin-woo was obliged to attend. He didn't usually take Ha-Eun to these events, but the girl had expressed a rare desire to go, and Min-ji had suggested it might be good for her to see a little more of the world. Jin-woo reluctantly agreed, instructing Min-ji to accompany Ha-Eun and ensure she was comfortable. The night of the gala arrived. The hotel ballroom was a spectacle of twinkling lights, soft music, and Seoul's elite in designer outfits. Jin-woo, impeccable in his dark suit, was surrounded by shareholders and business partners. Min-ji, wearing a simple but elegant dress she had bought with her savings, was sitting at a more distant table with Ha-un, who was fascinated by the people and the decor. While Jin-woo conversed, a slender and elegant figure approached. It was Choi Seo-yeon, a well-known socialite, daughter of a rival magnate, and someone his family had always expected him to consider as a future wife. She was beautiful, with a calculated smile and eyes that assessed everything around her. "Jin-woo, darling, you look stunning as always," Seo-yeon said, her voice melodic, but with a hint of superiority. She cast a quick glance at Ha-un and Min-ji. "And I see you brought Ha-un. What a surprise." Jin-woo nodded, a forced smile on his lips. "Seo-yeon, good to see you." Seo-yeon approached, her gaze fixed on Min-ji. "And who is this Jin-woo? A new employee? She seems a bit out of place for an event like this. Not your secretary, is she?" She laughed, a sharp, condescending sound. "Ah, wait, it's the nanny, isn't it? I heard you've been having trouble keeping one. This one seems, well, different." She emphasized the word with a tone of disdain, implying the simplicity of Min-ji's dress and her unfamiliarity with the environment. Min-ji felt her face flush, but she maintained her composure, her eyes fixed on Ha-un, who seemed to have sensed the tension. Jin-woo, who until then had maintained a neutral expression, felt a wave of irritation. He looked at Seo-yeon, his eyes cold and hard. "Choi Seo-yeon," he said, his voice low but charged with an unquestionable authority that silenced the surrounding conversation. "Miss Kim Min-ji is Ha-un's nanny, and she is the only person who has managed to bring a smile to my daughter's face in years. She's not out of place. She's exactly where she should be, caring for someone important to me. And I will not allow anyone to disrespect her, especially in my presence." Silence fell upon the small group. Seo-yeon paled, her smile faltering. She hadn't expected such a public reprimand. Min-ji raised her eyes to Jin-woo, a mix of shock and gratitude in her gaze. He had defended her, publicly, and the way he said, "caring for someone important to me," made her heart skip an unexpected beat. Jin-woo, in turn, felt a strange satisfaction. He had acted on impulse, defending Min-ji without a second thought. The anger he felt seeing her humiliated was real, and the realization that he cared about her dignity and Ha-un's well-being was an awakening. He looked at Min-ji, who now stared at him with an expression he couldn't decipher, and realized that the nanny everyone had rejected was, in fact, the only one who could bring warmth and love back to his family, and perhaps to his own life. The silence that followed Jin-woo's words was more deafening than any music. Choi Seo-yeon, her face pale and lips pressed tightly, took a step back, her impeccable composure shattered by the public humiliation. Whispers began to spread like wildfire, curious and shocked glances fixed on the trio. No one expected the cold and reserved Lee Jin-woo to defend someone with such vehemence, much less a nanny. Min-ji felt a warmth rise up her neck, not from shame, but from an overwhelming mix of surprise and gratitude. She looked at Jin-woo, who now stared at her with an intensity that made her hold her breath. His eyes, usually so distant, were fixed on her, laden with an emotion she couldn't decipher. The way he had defended her, the way he said, "caring for someone important to me," resonated in her mind, making her heart beat faster. Ha-un, sitting beside Min-ji, watched the scene with her large, dark eyes. A glimpse of something, perhaps pride, perhaps a silent satisfaction, passed across her childish face. She squeezed Min-ji's hand under the table, an almost imperceptible gesture, but one that meant the world to the nanny. Jin-woo, sensing the general discomfort and unwanted attention, gestured to one of his assistants. "Prepare the car. We're leaving." He turned to Minji, his voice now softer but still firm. "Miss Kim, please take Ha-un. There's no more reason for us to stay." Minji nodded, taking Ha-un's hand. As they moved away from the table, she felt the gazes piercing her back, but the sense of protection Jinwoo's words had given her kept her upright. She looked back one last time and saw Seo-yeon being consoled by some friends, her eyes full of fury directed at her. Minji knew it wouldn't end there. In the car, the silence was heavy. Ha-un was nestled in the back seat, her head resting on Minji's shoulder, who gently hugged her. Jinwoo drove, his knuckles white on the steering wheel. He didn't say a word, but Minji could feel the tension emanating from him. "Mr. Lee," Minji began, her voice low, I thank you for defending me. You didn't have to do that." Jinwoo gripped the steering wheel. "I don't allow anyone to disrespect the people who work for me, especially in my presence." His voice was cold, but Minji felt there was something more behind it. "And especially someone who is taking care of my daughter." He glanced at her quickly in the rearview mirror. "You've done more for Ha-un in 15 days than anyone else in years. That's not something I would tolerate being devalued." "I'm just doing my job." "No," Jinwoo retorted, his voice a little softer. "You're doing more than that." Ha-un, who seemed to be sleeping, stirred slightly and murmured, "Minji is the best." A small, almost imperceptible smile touched Jinwoo's lips. Minji looked at Ha-un, her heart overflowing with affection. In the days that followed, the atmosphere in the Lee mansion changed even more. Jinwoo, though still busy with work, seemed more present. He no longer avoided Minji, and occasionally she caught him observing her interact with Ha-un. He saw her helping Ha-un with homework, laughing at a funny drawing the girl had made, or simply sitting in silence, reading a book while Ha-un played nearby. One afternoon, Jinwoo found Minji in the library, showing Ha-un an old atlas. Ha-un, who had previously refused to learn about geography, was pointing to different countries, asking questions about their animals and cultures. Minji responded with patience and enthusiasm, her eyes shining. "She's really interested," Jinwoo said, his voice surprising Minji. Minji turned, a little flushed. "Yes, sir. She has incredible curiosity. She just needs a little encouragement." Jinwoo nodded, watching his daughter. I didn't know." "It's hard to know when you're so busy," Minji said softly without judgment. He looked at her, and for a moment their eyes met in a silent understanding. It was a tenuous but real connection, one that went beyond an employer-employee relationship. Jinwoo felt a pang of something new, an admiration perhaps, or a kind of respect he rarely felt for anyone. The public defense at the gala had been a watershed moment, not just for Minji and Ha-un, but for Jinwoo himself. He had realized that the nanny he had hired out of desperation, the woman he had judged by her humble appearance, was the only one managing to break the ice barrier that he and Ha-un had built around themselves, and to his surprise, he cared deeply about it. As Minji continued to bring warmth and life to the mansion, Jinwoo began to question not only his own perceptions, but also the future he had planned for himself and his daughter. Minji's presence was rewriting the rules of his world, and he was beginning to wonder if perhaps this new version was much better. Far away, in her own mansion, Choi Seo-yeon was on the phone, her eyes gleaming with cold rage. "I want you to find out everything about Kim Min-ji," she said, her voice icy. "Every detail. No one humiliates Choi Seo-yeon and gets away with it." The battle, Minji knew, was far from over. In the days that followed the gala, a subtle tension hung in the air of the Lee mansion, mixed with a new and unexpected lightness. Minji felt the curious glances of the staff, who now treated her with a respect blended with admiration and caution. She knew that Jinwoo's defense had changed everyone's perception, but it had also placed her under a new kind of scrutiny. Seo Yon's threat was a constant premonition, a chill down her spine, but Minji refused to let it deter her from her purpose, caring for Ha-un. And Ha-un, in turn, blossomed. The girl, previously so reclusive, now sought Minji's company with a touching naturalness. They spent hours in the library, not just with the atlas, but with books of fairy tales, science, and art. Minji encouraged Ha-un's creativity, and the girl began to draw more frequently, filling notebooks with colorful landscapes and imaginary characters. One morning, Jin-woo came down for breakfast and found Ha-un sitting at the table, drawing feverishly. Minji was beside her, eating in silence and observing the girl with a gentle smile. Jin-woo noticed that Ha-un was no longer eating alone in her room. It was a small but significant change. "Good morning, Dad," Ha-un said, a rare occurrence. She held up a drawing. "Look, it's Minji and me in the garden." Jin-woo approached, and for the first time in a long time, a genuine though small smile appeared on his lips as he saw the drawing. It was a childish portrait, but full of life, showing the two figures holding hands under a radiant sun. "It's beautiful, Ha-un," he said, his voice softer than usual. He looked at Minji, who blushed slightly. "Miss Kim, you have a talent for inspiring." Minji simply smiled, feeling the warmth of his words. It wasn't just professional gratitude. There was a recognition there that made her feel valued in a way she never expected. However, the calm didn't last. A few days later, Minji received a formal invitation to a children's charity event organized by the Choi Foundation, Seo Yon's family foundation. The invitation was for Lee Ha-un and her companion. Jin-woo, upon seeing the invitation, frowned. "It's a trap," he said. His eyes dark. "Seo Yon does nothing without a reason." "I know, sir," Minji responded, her voice firm. "But Ha-un is very excited. She's never been to an event like this." Ha-un, who was nearby, looked at her father with expectation. "Please, Dad, Minji said there will be lots of children and games." Jin-woo hesitated. He wanted to protect Minji, but he also didn't want to deprive Ha-un of an experience that was making her happy. He sighed. "All right, but you won't go alone, Miss Kim. I will go with you." Minji looked at him, surprised. "You?" "Yes," he said, his voice decisive. "I won't let Seo Yon humiliate you again, and Ha-un deserves to have her father present." The night of the event arrived. It was a party hall decorated with balloons and toys, full of running children and laughter. Seo Yon was there, impeccable in a silk dress, with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. She spotted Jin-woo, Minji, and Ha-un entering, and her smile sharpened. "Jin-woo, what a pleasant surprise!" Seo Yon approached, her voice melodic. "And Ha-un, you look adorable. I see you brought your nanny again." "What?" "Dedication." She cast a condescending glance at Minji, who wore a simple but elegant dress that Jin-woo had insisted on buying for her. "Miss Choi," Jin-woo responded, his voice cold. "It's an event for children. Minji's dedication to Ha-un is exactly what this place represents." Seo Yon ignored Jin-woo, turning to Minji with a forced smile. "Minji, right? I heard you're very good with children. It's a shame not everyone has the same luck to have such an available nanny. But of course, not everyone can afford a high-level education for their nannies, can they? Life experience sometimes has to compensate for a lack of diplomas." She laughed, a dry sound, implying that Minji was of humble origin and without adequate training, trying to diminish her value in public. Minji felt her face flush, but she maintained her posture, her eyes fixed on Ha-un, who was clinging to her hand, sensing the tension. Before Minji could respond, Jin-woo stepped forward, placing himself slightly in front of her. "Choi Seo Yon," he said, his voice low but charged with a contained fury that made Seo Yan recoil. Miss Kim Min-ji has more dignity, intelligence, and compassion in a single finger than many people who boast of their diplomas and fortunes. She doesn't need a piece of paper to prove her worth, nor your approval. She has mine, and most importantly, my daughter's, and that's all that matters. Silence fell upon the small group again, the shocked glances of those present fixed on Jin Woo. He had defended Min-ji again, and this time his words were even more cutting, more personal. Seo Yan paled, her smile disappearing completely, replaced by an expression of fury and humiliation. Min-ji looked at Jin Woo, her heart pounding. The way he defended her, the passion in his voice, the way he placed her above any social judgment. It was something she had never imagined. He wasn't just defending an employee, he was defending her. And with each defense, the ice barrier around Jin Woo's heart seemed to melt a little more, revealing a man Min-ji was beginning to see in a totally new light. Jin Woo, in turn, felt a strange and powerful satisfaction. The anger he felt seeing Min-ji humiliated was overwhelming, and the need to protect her, to affirm her worth, was undeniable. He looked at Min-ji, who now stared at him with a mix of gratitude and an emotion he couldn't name, and realized that the nanny everyone had rejected was, in fact, the only one who could bring warmth and love back to his family, and perhaps to his own life. The battle with Seo Yan was just the beginning, but Jin Woo was ready to fight for Min-ji and for everything she represented for his family. The silence in the ballroom was almost palpable, broken only by the distant murmur of children playing. Choi Seo-yeon, her face pale and lips trembling, seemed to have shrunk under Jin Woo's icy gaze. The humiliation was visible in every fiber of her being, and she recoiled a step, unable to sustain the confrontation. Her eyes, previously full of scorn, now burned with a silent fury and a promise of retaliation. Min-ji felt a whirlwind of emotions. Gratitude, yes, but also an overwhelming confusion. He had defended her with a vehemence that went far beyond an employer protecting his employee. It was personal, passionate. Her heart pounded erratically, and she found herself unable to avert her gaze from Jin Woo, who now looked like a victorious general, but with an intensity that left her breathless. Ha-eun, oblivious to the complexity of the adult dispute, squeezed Min-ji's hand. "Min-ji, can I go play on the slide?" she asked, her childish voice breaking the tension like a ray of sunshine. Jin Woo turned to his daughter, and the hardness in his face instantly softened. "Of course, Ha-eun, but stay close to Min-ji, okay?" He then looked at Min-ji, an almost imperceptible gleam in his eyes. "Let's take her." As they moved away from Seo-yeon, who remained petrified, Jin Woo felt a wave of satisfaction. It wasn't just the victory over Seo-yeon, but the clarity the moment had brought him. He wanted to protect Min-ji. He needed to protect her, and the idea that she could bring warmth and love back into his life and Ha-eun's was no longer a distant possibility, but a truth he was beginning to embrace. In the car, on the way home, Ha-eun slept peacefully in the back seat, her head on Min-ji's lap. The silence was different now, no longer heavy, but comfortable. I don't know how to thank you. You didn't have to defend me like that." Jin Woo kept his eyes on the road, but his voice was soft. "I needed to, Miss Kim. No one has the right to humiliate another person, especially someone with your integrity." He paused, and Min-ji felt the weight of his gaze on her for an instant. "And besides, you are important to Ha-eun, and to me." Min-ji felt her face flush. "For you," he sighed, an almost inaudible sound. "Yes, Min-ji. You brought something back to this house that I thought I had lost forever. For us." He didn't elaborate, but the tone of his voice was laden with a sincerity Min-ji had never heard before. It was a recognition, a vulnerability that touched her deeply. Far away, in the opulent Choi mansion, Seo-yeon threw her cell phone onto the coffee table, the sound echoing in the silence of her living room. Her eyes were red with rage, and the wineglass in her hand trembled. "How dare he?" she murmured, her voice hoarse. "He humiliated me for that insignificant nanny." She picked up the phone again, dialing a number with furious fingers. "I want everything. Every detail of Kim Min-ji's life, where she studied, where she lived, who her parents are. If she has debts, any slip-up, any secret. I want her exposed, and I want it public. Make her regret being born." Her voice was icy, and the promise of revenge was palpable. In the days that followed, the Lee mansion seemed more illuminated. Jin-woo, though still with his demanding routine, found himself seeking the company of Min-ji and Ha-yoon more frequently. One afternoon, he found them in the kitchen, Ha-yoon helping Min-ji prepare cookies. Flour covered the girl's nose, and Min-ji laughed as she wiped it away. "Dad, come help us!" Ha-yoon exclaimed, extending a rolling pin to him. Jin-woo hesitated for a moment, but Min-ji's smile encouraged him. He took off his jacket, rolled up his shirt sleeves, and for the first time in years joined them in the kitchen, feeling the warmth of the oven and the sweet smell of vanilla. His hands, accustomed to signing millionaire contracts, were now covered in flour. Min-ji watched him, a genuine smile on her lips, and Jin-woo felt a peace he hadn't experienced in a long time. While Ha-eun shaped cookies into funny forms, Jin-woo and Min-ji exchanged a look. There were no words, just a silent understanding. He was there, present, and it was Min-ji who had opened that door. He knew the calm was fragile, that Seo-yeon wouldn't give up. But as he watched his daughter laugh and Min-ji smile, Jin-woo felt a new strength. He was ready for whatever came. He would fight for this new warmth, for this new family that Min-ji was helping to build. The days that followed the Choi Foundation event brought an unexpected lightness to the Lee mansion. The tension that had previously hung in the air like a cold mist dissipated, replaced by a warmth that radiated from Ha-yoon's interactions with Min-ji, and now, surprisingly, with Jin-woo. The scene in the kitchen, with Jin-woo in rolled-up sleeves and flour-dusted hands, became a silent landmark. He was no longer just the distant and demanding father. He was a present father, a man who laughed with his daughter and exchanged knowing glances with the nanny. One morning, as Ha-eun finished her breakfast, Jin-woo observed Min-ji patiently helping her tie her shoelaces. The girl chattered about her plans for the day, and Min-ji responded with the same energy, her eyes shining. Jin-woo felt a pang of something he couldn't name, but that was pleasant. It was the feeling of a home, of a family he thought was irremediably broken. "Min-ji, will you take me to the park today?" Ha-eun asked, her eyes wide and hopeful. "If your father allows, of course." Min-ji responded, casting a glance at Jin-woo. He cleared his throat, trying to disguise the smile that threatened to surface. "As long as you're back before lunch. I have an important meeting, but I want to make sure Ha-eun has lunch at home." It was a flimsy excuse to ensure they were nearby. Min-ji nodded, a soft smile on her lips. "Right, sir." As Jin-woo prepared to leave, he caught himself stopping at the door, observing Min-ji and Ha-eun saying goodbye. The image of them, so full of life and joy, was a striking contrast to the loneliness that had filled the house before Min-ji's arrival. He knew he was growing attached to her, to this new dynamic. The idea of Min-ji leaving suddenly seemed unbearable. Min-ji, in turn, felt herself on shaky ground. Jin-woo's kindness, his public defenses, and the growing intimacy in the mansion left her confused. She was a nanny, hired under strict terms. But the look he gave her, the way he sought her opinion, the way he opened up to Ha-eun because of her, all of it went beyond a professional relationship. Her heart, which she tried to keep protected, began to yield to the warmth he, unexpectedly, radiated. She knew that Seo-yeon was a real threat, but Jin-woo's presence made her feel strangely safe. However, the calm was indeed fragile. Far from Jinwoo's and Minji's eyes, the gears of Seo Yon's revenge were already in motion. She had mobilized her network of contacts, digging into every corner of Kim Minji's life. It didn't take long for the first results to appear. A week after the event, Jinwoo was in his office reviewing reports when his assistant, Mr. Park, entered with a worried expression. "Sir, I received some strange emails and calls this morning," he began, placing a tablet on Jinwoo's desk. "It seems there are some rumors circulating about Miss Kim Minji." Jinwoo frowned, tension returning to his shoulders. "Rumors? What kind of rumors?" Mr. Park hesitated, sliding the tablet to Jinwoo. "Articles in smaller blogs, online forum posts. They're questioning her background, insinuating she used questionable connections to get the job, and even mentioning an alleged old family debt. All very vague, but with quite a defamatory tone." Jinwoo took the tablet. The headlines were sensational. The photos of Minji, taken from afar, were distorted. He felt anger bubbling in his chest. Seo Yon hadn't wasted time. She was attacking Minji where it hurt most, her reputation and her dignity. He knew this was just the beginning. Seo Yon wanted to destroy Minji publicly, and he wouldn't allow it. The battle he had promised to fight was just beginning, and this time it would be much dirtier. Jinwoo threw the tablet back onto the table, the dry sound echoing in the office. His eyes, previously focused on the poisonous words, now burned with a contained fury. He stood up, walking to the window, observing the city below, but without truly seeing it. His mind was on Minji, on her dignity, on her reputation. "Mr. Park," Jinwoo said, his voice low and dangerous, "I want you to mobilize our legal team immediately. I want them to trace the origin of each of these publications. I want them to identify those responsible and prepare defamation lawsuits. And I want them to monitor all social media and blogs for new mentions." Mr. Park, accustomed to his boss's intensity, nodded, but there was genuine concern on his face. "Yes, sir, but this could be a long battle. Seo Yon has considerable influence and resources, and these smaller blogs are difficult to trace completely." "I don't care," Jinwoo retorted, turning to face his assistant, determination etched on every line of his face. "I don't care about the time or the cost. No one will attack Minji with impunity. She is an honest woman, and I will not allow her life to be destroyed by lies." He paused, his voice softening slightly. "And above all, I don't want her to know about this yet. Protect her as much as you can. I don't want her to be exposed to this filth." Mr. Park nodded, understanding the gravity of the situation and the depth of Jinwoo's feelings. "Understood, sir. I will do my best." While Jinwoo tried to contain the storm within himself, Minji, oblivious to the unfolding plot, was in the garden with Ha-eun. The morning sun warmed her skin, and the girl's laughter as she tried to catch butterflies was music to her ears. Minji felt lighter, happier than in a long time. Jinwoo's presence, his unexpected kindness, the glances they exchanged, all of it made her question the limits of her professional relationship. She caught herself thinking about him more than she should, and the warmth he brought to the house was something she feared losing. However, the bubble of tranquility began to subtly crack. During lunch, the cook, Mrs. Kim, who had always been warm, seemed more reserved. Her eyes darted away from Minji's with an uncomfortable frequency. Later, when picking up Ha-eun from school, Minji noticed some parents whispering and casting curious glances in her direction. One of them, a woman who always greeted her with a smile, merely waved coldly. Minji felt a shiver. It was as if a cold mist was forming around her. She tried to ignore it, attributing it to her own imagination, but the feeling of being watched, judged, persisted. Far away, in the Choi mansion, Seo Yon smiled, a cruel and satisfied smile. She was sitting in front of her laptop, reading the comments on blogs and forums. "Excellent," she murmured, savoring every defamatory word. Reputation is everything in this world, and hers is in tatters. She picked up the phone again. It's time for phase 2. I want the rumors to reach the most popular gossip newspapers, and I want someone to leak the story of the family debt with details. Let her feel the weight of public scorn. That night, Jinwoo arrived home later than usual, exhausted, but his mind still buzzing with legal strategies. He found Minji in the living room, reading a book to Ha-eun, who was almost asleep in her lap. The scene was so peaceful, so full of love, that he felt a pang of pain. How could he protect her from all the malice Seo-yeon was pouring over her? Ha-eun yawned, and Minji took her to her room. When she returned, Jinwoo was waiting. He observed her, trying to find the right words. "Minji," he began, his voice softer than normal. "Are you okay?" Minji hesitated. "Yes, sir. Why do you ask?" I just wanted to be sure," he said, avoiding her gaze. He didn't want to lie, but he also didn't want to burden her. He wanted to protect her, but he knew the truth was inevitable. The next day, the calm was brutally shattered. Minji was in the kitchen preparing Ha-eun's breakfast when Mrs. Kim, the cook, entered. Her face pale and eyes wide. In her hands, a newspaper. "Miss Kim, did you see this?" Mrs. Kim asked, her voice trembling, extending the newspaper. Minji took the newspaper confused. On the front page, a photo of her, taken from afar, with a bold headline that seemed to scream, "The Mysterious Nanny, Dark Secrets of Millionaire Lee Jinwoo's New Companion." Below, an article full of insinuations about her humble origin, the alleged family debt, her lack of adequate training, and the suggestion that she had taken advantage of Jinwoo. Minji's world collapsed. The newspaper slipped from her hands, falling to the floor with a dull thud. Her heart pounded erratically, and the air seemed to thin in her lungs. The words, the lies, the public humiliation, all hit her like a lightning bolt. She felt tears well up, but held them back, pain and anger mixing. Seo-yeon had kept her promise, and now Minji was in the center of a storm she didn't know how to face. The sound echoed in the silent kitchen, a dark omen for the day that had barely begun. Minji felt her blood run cold in her veins, and the air seemed to thin in her lungs. The words, the lies, the public humiliation, all hit her like a lightning bolt, leaving her paralyzed. "Miss Kim!" Mrs. Kim called, her voice choked with concern, extending a hand to Minji. "Are you okay?" Minji didn't respond. Her eyes were fixed on the headline, on the bold letters that seemed to scream her disgrace. The photo, a distorted and unfavorable image of her, seemed to mock her vulnerability. The pain was physical, a sharp pang in her chest, mixed with a cold and growing anger. Seo-yeon had kept her promise, and in a much crueler way than Minji could have imagined. I need a moment," Minji managed to murmur, her voice hoarse. She turned away, trying to hide the tremor in her hands and the moisture threatening her eyes. She didn't want Mrs. Kim to see her collapse. She didn't want anyone to see her like this. At that instant, the kitchen door opened, and Lee Jinwoo entered. His expression as serious as ever, but with a gleam of tiredness in his eyes. He had spent the entire night mobilizing his legal team. He stopped abruptly upon seeing the scene, the newspaper on the floor, Mrs. Kim pale, and Minji with her back turned, her shoulders tense. His gaze fell upon the open newspaper, and he saw the headline. A knot formed in his stomach. He knew this would happen, but the sight of Minji being exposed like that in his own home was unbearable. "What's happening here?" he asked, his voice low but charged with an authority that made Mrs. Kim shrink slightly. Mrs. Kim pointed to the newspaper with a trembling finger. "Sir, the newspaper. It's about Miss Kim." Jinwoo approached, his steps firm, and picked up the newspaper. His eyes scanned the article, and the anger he had tried to contain exploded. He crumpled the paper in his hand, the sound of tearing paper echoing in the kitchen. "Minji," he said, his voice now softer but with a palpable urgency. He turned to her, and Minji finally faced him. Her eyes were red, but there were no tears. There was a mix of pain and a fierce determination. "I'm sorry you have to see this way," Jinwoo continued, his voice full of a sincerity Minji had never heard before. "I knew Seo-yeon was acting. I was trying to protect you from this." Minji shook her head slowly. "Protect? How can one protect someone from a lie that spreads everywhere?" Her voice was choked but firm. "I knew she would do something, but not like this, not with my life." "It's not your life," Jinwoo retorted, taking a step forward, his eyes fixed on hers. "It's a distortion, a calumny, and I won't allow it to destroy you." He extended a hand, hesitant, and touched her shoulder. The touch was light, but laden with a silent promise. "Minji, I've already mobilized my legal team. We're tracing every source, every person involved. We're going to sue every one of them for defamation." Minji felt a shiver run through her body. Jinwoo's hand on her shoulder was an anchor in the midst of the storm. She looked at him, at the seriousness on his face, at the contained fury in his eyes, and a part of her, the part that had closed itself off to the world, began to open. "But what about Ha-eun?" she asked, her concern for the girl overcoming her own pain. "She can't see this." "She won't see it," Jinwoo promised, his voice firm. "Mrs. Kim, please make sure all newspapers and any mention of this are removed from the house immediately. And I don't want Ha-eun to hear anything about it." "Understood." Mrs. Kim nodded quickly, already moving to collect the crumpled newspaper. Jinwoo returned his gaze to Minji. "Minji, I know this is difficult, but I am with you. No matter what they say, no matter what they try to do, I will not allow them to harm you." He paused, his eyes meeting hers in an intense gaze. "You are part of this family now, and I protect my family." Jinwoo's words, "You are part of this family now," echoed in Minji's mind, an anchor in the midst of the storm. "Mr. Jinwoo," Minji began, her voice still choked, but with a new resolution. I don't know what to say, but I don't want this to affect Ha-eun, not at all." Jinwoo nodded, his eyes conveying a deep understanding. "And it won't, I guarantee it. Mrs. Kim is already making sure nothing reaches her, and I myself will make sure the school is aware of the situation and that Ha-eun is protected from any gossip." He squeezed her shoulder lightly. "Don't worry about Ha-eun. Worry about staying strong. I'll take care of the rest." Mrs. Kim, who had collected the crumpled newspaper, observed the scene with a mix of relief and admiration. The way Jinwoo defended Minji was something she never imagined seeing. That day, the Lee mansion, usually a refuge of tranquility, transformed into a center of discreet activity. Jinwoo's lawyers and press advisors moved with urgency, while he, with calculating coolness, orchestrated the counteroffensive. He instructed Mrs. Kim and the other staff to maintain a united front and not to listen to any rumors. Minji, in turn, tried to maintain normality for Ha-eun. She played, read stories, and laughed with the girl, but each laugh seemed an effort, each smile a mask. Sometimes, when Ha-eun was distracted, Minji felt curious glances from the other staff, who tried to disguise the fact that they had read the newspaper. The feeling of being the center of attention, of having her life exposed and distorted, was suffocating. In the afternoon, when Minji took Ha-eun to the park, the reality of the situation hit her with full force. The whispers were louder, the glances more direct. Some mothers, who had previously greeted her warmly, now moved away, pulling their children with them. Minji felt her face burn with shame, but she kept her head high, holding Ha-eun's hand firmly. She wouldn't allow Seo Yon's malice to affect the girl. Meanwhile, Jin Woo was in his office, finalizing a press statement. He knew he needed to act publicly, not just with legal actions, but with an unequivocal demonstration of support. "Prepare a press conference for tomorrow morning," he instructed his advisor. "I want it to be clear. Any attack on Miss Kim will be considered a direct attack on my family and my company, and legal actions will be relentless." Far away in the Choi mansion, Seo Yon was euphoric. She read the online comments, the tabloid headlines, savoring every piece of Min-ji's humiliation. "Perfect," she murmured, a wicked smile on her lips. "No one will want a nanny with that reputation. And Jin Woo, he can't associate with someone like that for long." However, her satisfaction was interrupted by a notification on her phone. It was Lee Jin-woo's press statement. She clicked, and her smile froze. Jin-woo's words were clear, concise, and above all fierce. He not only denied the accusations, but classified them as malicious slanders and cowardly attacks against a valuable member of his family. He promised severe legal actions against all involved in the dissemination of such lies. Seo Yon threw her phone onto the table, rage boiling in her veins. Family? He called her family? She couldn't believe it. Jin Woo, the cold and distant man, was publicly defending a humble nanny with such vehemence. This wasn't just a statement, it was a declaration of war, and it meant that Min-ji was much more to him than she had imagined. That night, Min-ji was in Ha-Yun's room, rocking the girl to sleep. Jin Woo entered, stopping at the door, observing the scene. The soft light of the bedside lamp illuminated Min-ji's face, and he saw the tiredness in her eyes, but also an unshakable strength. "I made a press statement," he said, his voice low so as not to wake Ha-un. "It will be released tomorrow. I defended you, publicly." Min-ji turned, her eyes meeting his. There was a deep gratitude in her gaze, mixed with a pang of concern. "Thank you, Mr. Jin Woo, but won't this attract even more attention to us?" "Perhaps," he admitted, taking a step forward, "but it's the only way to combat this filth, to show everyone that you're not alone, that I'm with you." He extended a hand and hesitantly touched her cheek, a tender and unexpected gesture. "You are a strong woman, Min-ji, and I won't let anyone bring you down." Jin Woo's hand remained on Min-ji's cheek for an instant that seemed an eternity, an unexpected warmth spreading across her face and heart. Their eyes met, and in that silent gaze, Min-ji saw not only the promise of protection, but a vulnerability he rarely showed. It was the first time he had touched her so intimately, and the gesture, amidst the storm forming outside, was a refuge. I trust you, Mr. Jin Woo," Min-ji managed to murmur, her voice choked with emotion. The gratitude was immense, but there was also a latent fear of what all of this would mean for the future. Jin Woo slowly withdrew his hand, but his eyes didn't stray from hers. "And I trust you, Min-ji, more than anyone else. Now rest. Tomorrow will be a long day." He turned and left the room, leaving Min-ji alone with her thoughts and the accelerated beating of her heart. The next morning, the Lee mansion woke up under a media siege. Reporters and photographers crowded at the gates, eager for any information after Jin Woo's explosive statement. Inside the house, the atmosphere was one of contained tension. Mrs. Kim and the other staff moved with discretion, but the curious glances at Min-ji were inevitable. Min-ji tried to keep Ha-un's routine as normal as possible. While they had breakfast, Ha-un, oblivious to the external chaos, chattered about her drawings. Min-ji smiled and responded, but her mind was elsewhere. She knew that Jin Woo's press conference was scheduled for a few hours later. Jin Woo, in turn, was in his office, reviewing the last details with his lawyers. His expression was of steel, his determination unshakable. "I want the message to be clear," he said, his voice low and firm. "There will be no tolerance for slanders, and Miss Kim is an essential part of my family and Hyun's life. Any attempt to harm her will be treated with the utmost legal severity." A little before the conference, Jin-woo found Minji in the living room. She was sitting on the floor, playing with Ha-un. Their eyes met, and a tacit understanding passed between them. "I'm going now," he said, his voice a little softer than usual. Minji nodded, standing up. "Good luck, Mr. Jin-woo. I'll be here." He gave a brief nod and left, leaving Minji with a mix of apprehension and pride. The press conference was a spectacle. Jin-woo, impeccably dressed with his imposing posture, faced the avalanche of questions with a cold calm. He didn't flinch. "I would like to reiterate the statement issued yesterday," he began, his voice resonating with authority. "The defamatory allegations against Miss Kim Min-ji are unfounded and malicious. Miss Kim is my daughter, Lee Hyun's nanny, and a person of irreproachable character. More than that, she has become an indispensable figure in our home, a valuable member of our family." The word family echoed in the room, causing a buzz among the journalists. Jin-woo waited for the noise to subside before continuing, his eyes sweeping the room with an intensity that silenced everyone. "My daughter, who went through a difficult period, who found in Miss Kim the affection and support she needed. Attacking Miss Kim is attacking the stability and happiness of my daughter. It is attacking my family, and I will not allow it." He made a dramatic pause. "My legal team is already taking appropriate measures against all media outlets and individuals who disseminated these lies, and I guarantee there will be no forgiveness." Jin-woo's statement was a devastating blow to Seo-yeon. She watched the press conference on her television, her face contorted with fury. The image of Jin-woo defending Min-ji with such passion, calling her a family member in front of the entire country, was unbearable. "Family member? He's gone mad!" she shrieked, throwing the remote at the screen. "He's ruining his own reputation for that insignificant nanny." Seo-yeon felt the ground tremble beneath her feet. The plan to humiliate Min-ji and drive her away from Jin-woo had spectacularly backfired. Instead of destroying Min-ji, Jin-woo had elevated her, cementing her place beside him in a way Seo-yeon never imagined. Rage gave way to cold despair. She needed a new plan, something more drastic, something that would hit Jin-woo where it hurt most and make him see that Min-ji was, in fact, a threat. Meanwhile, in the Lee mansion, Min-ji watched the conference on a small TV in the kitchen, beside Mrs. Kim. Jin-woo's words hit her hard, "valuable member of our family." He really had said that. Tears of relief and gratitude streamed down her face. Mrs. Kim, emotional, placed a hand on her shoulder. "He's a good man, Miss Min-ji," Mrs. Kim said, her voice soft. "He knows what's right." Min-ji merely nodded, unable to speak. The weight of public humiliation had been lifted, replaced by a wave of hope and a feeling of belonging she never thought she would find. But she knew that Seo-yeon's war hadn't ended. The battle had been won, but the war was still far from over, and now she wasn't fighting just for herself, but for Ha-eun, and for that man who, against all expectations, had become her fiercest defender. What would come next, she wondered, feeling a shiver of anticipation and fear. The bond between her and Jin-woo, now exposed to the world, would be tested in ways they could barely imagine. Seo-yeon's response didn't take long to arrive, but it was in a way no one expected. Days after the press conference, while Min-ji and Ha-eun were at the park as usual, a black car stopped abruptly. Seo-yeon got out, not alone, but accompanied by two burly men and a woman in a suit who introduced herself as a social worker. "Miss Kim Min-ji, I have a provisional court order for the custody of Lee Ha-eun," the woman announced, extending a document. "Mrs. Choi Seo-yeon has filed a petition alleging neglect and an unstable family environment, citing the recent scandals and the nanny's inadequacy. Minji felt her blood run cold. Ha-un, scared, clung to her leg. "This is absurd. There's no neglect whatsoever. And Mr. Jinwoo has already denied all the slanders." Seo-yeon smiled, a cruel smile. "Denying doesn't erase the stain, darling, and a single father with a nanny of dubious reputation is a risk to the child. I, as a stable figure from a good family, am the safest option for Ha-un." She tried to approach Ha-un, but Minji shielded her. "You won't touch her," Minji growled, her voice trembling with rage and fear. At that exact moment, Jinwoo's car stopped abruptly. He had been alerted by one of the mansion's security guards that Minji and Ha-un had been approached. Jinwoo got out of the car, his expression more furious than Minji had ever seen. "What's happening here?" he demanded, his voice cutting the air like a whip. The social worker tried to explain, but Jinwoo interrupted her. "I'm aware of Mrs. Choi's petition. My lawyers are already handling it. This provisional order is invalid. There is no legal basis to remove my daughter from her home or from her nanny." He approached Minji and Ha-un, putting a protective arm around both. "Ha-un is safe, with Minji, with me." Seo-yeon, seeing her plan crumble, tried one last card. "Jinwoo, you can't be serious. This woman is ruining your life, your reputation. Think of Ha-un." Jinwoo turned to her, his eyes cold as ice. "You want to know what I'm thinking, Seo-yeon? I'm thinking you are a pathetic woman, consumed by envy and malice. Minji didn't ruin my life, she saved it. She brought warmth back to this house, love to my daughter, and taught me what it means to be a real family." He knelt down, getting to Ha-un's height. "Ha-un, my love, are you okay?" Ha-un nodded, squeezing Minji's hand. "Yes, Daddy. Minji protected me." Jinwoo looked at Minji, a gleam of gratitude and something deeper in his eyes. He stood up and, to the shock of Seo-yeon and the social worker, took Minji's hand, intertwining their fingers. "Miss Kim Minji is not just my daughter's nanny," Jinwoo declared, his voice loud and clear so everyone could hear. "She is the woman I love, and she is the mother Ha-un chose. We are a family." Jinwoo's words were a final blow to Seo-yeon. Her face paled, and she recoiled, speechless. The social worker, realizing the seriousness of the situation and Jinwoo's firmness, began to apologize and retreat with her companions. Jinwoo turned to Minji, his eyes full of an emotion she never thought she would see in him. "Minji," he began, his voice softer now, but still laden with intensity. "I know all of this has been difficult, but I can't imagine my life, or Ha-un's life, without you. Would you accept to be more than her nanny? Would you accept to be my partner, Ha-un's mother, my wife?" Minji felt tears stream freely, not from sadness, but from an overwhelming joy. She looked at Ha-un, who smiled at her with shining eyes. The love she felt for that man and that girl overflowed. "Yes, Jinwoo," she whispered, her voice choked. "Yes, I accept." Jinwoo pulled her into a tight hug, and Ha-un joined them, forming a family embrace. The world around them disappeared. The paparazzi, the curious glances, the defeated figure of Seo-yeon walking away. Nothing mattered. The cold and demanding millionaire Lee Jinwoo had found his warmth, his love, his family, in the humble woman everyone had rejected. And Minji, the nanny who came to care for a little girl, had found a home and a love that transformed her life forever. The storm had passed, and the sun finally shone over the Lee mansion, illuminating the beginning of a new chapter for the family they had built together.